Remember searching SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your host, as well as a relationship and couples coach. I am really happy to be here today for another episode. And I really do appreciate all of you tuning in from wherever you are around the globe or wherever you're streaming from, either Facebook or Twitter or live on Sky TV channel 752. A very, very warm welcome from all of us here on British Muslim TV. We are going to discuss another topic tonight, very crucial, very important, as they all are when it comes to relationships, and tonight is no different. Before we do so, I want to remind the viewers that you are welcome to join in the conversation, and you can do so by calling directly to the studio live. And that number is 01924231083. Do ask the bill payer's permission before you call in, as standard network rates do apply. We also have a free WhatsApp service. So if you want to message us anonymously, you are most welcome to do so as well. And that number is 07585835150. Now, tonight's topic, as you can see, we are going to be discussing the recognition of the Islamic marriage in the UK. This is a very, very crucial topic. And the reason why that is because I have had so many instances which are coming to our platforms where there are complaints. And we've talked about divorce a lot, but we don't talk about the areas that happens around it. Many people are also in relationships for long term, and they stay in really detrimental or maybe sometimes abusive relationships because there is no option for them, because their status doesn't help their situation. We know as Muslims, it is crucial, it is vital, and for us to have a recognized marriage through the Islamic way, which is absolutely vital. But that, unfortunately, in this country and many other Western countries, is very limiting when problems do occur. And when they do happen, unfortunately, the rights and the responsibilities are not as clear cut. Now, as Muslims, we do have to abide by the law of the land. And even in saying that, we sometimes forget that actually living in the West, there is something that we are missing, and that is actually taking upon a civil marriage. There is so much around the legalities of what happens if that marriage actually fails. What happens to the children? What happens to the properties that you own, the assets, the finance, the years of investment that both people or one person has put in? What are your responsibilities? What are your rights? What is actually going to happen in that sort of scenario? Now, these questions, unfortunately, we don't like to think about, we don't want to talk about, we don't even want to even address, especially when you're in a new relationship and you're coming together with your partner, and it's an amazing moment. But as we have seen, unfortunately, that things are never, ever going to be absolutely smooth. And it's always better to clear it up really at the beginning. And yes, it is actually okay to be married in just the Islamic way. But then there are so many things that can be holding you back from your rights if you do not take the opportunity to be married in a civil way. A lot of people have the misconceptions thinking that if you're staying with someone for so long and the Islamic marriage is valid in a court of law, if you are claiming, if you are having a dispute, if there are issues, then the Islamic marriage gives you that right. But we are going to find out tonight for sure that that isn't unfortunately the case. And there are so so many people who are struggling and fighting battles, even if they've been married for many, many years. Again, there's a misconception of the common law, thinking that if you are living with somebody after so many years, then automatically you have the right to claim if you have contributed for that mortgage, for the house, for the rent, or taking care. We know that in the Western world, there are many people that do live out of wedlock, and they actually are quite happy to do so. They can even have a mortgage, they can live together and separate things. But even in those circumstances, there is very limiting factors that come into play when there is separation, unless it is stipulated beforehand or during the beginning. And the reason why I will say, let's do this at the beginning, let's talk about those difficult conversations at the beginning of your relationship, only because it will actually make it more easier for both parties to compromise, be fair, and be just in actually sharing or distributing the contributions or the assets or future things that may happen. When you are getting a divorce, when you are actually in that crucial, unfortunate circumstance of trying to split assets or split responsibilities, you're not necessarily in that frame of mind to actually even do what is right or do what is fair or just, because, you know, your emotions are taking over. And it's never under really good, amicable circumstances that you will separate, and you will actually want to make sure that everything is actually happening in a format which is actually fair. As much as we all want to be in that way, unfortunately, when there's hurt, when there's pain, we do need the legal system to actually step in and actually perform certain rights and duties upon us that will actually make us aware of where we stand, where we move forward in the future. Now, if this is something that you have experienced, if this is something that you are going through or even thinking about, a lot of the times we set aside a lot of the thoughts because we assume that we know our rights and we know the legal system. And it does differ. Even if you are getting married in a mosque, to a certain extent, not everything is laid out as clearly as in the English common law. We are not actually recognized fully, and things are not going to be exactly as you would imagine, unfortunately. So that's why this topic is related to this show in a very, very important manner. And it's crucial to address because a lot of the times, apart from the fact that you're going through the grief and the disappointment and the sadness of a separation, but on top of that, you're going to deal with the courts and knowing that even years of investment is not going to be halved, or you're not going to have your rights, or you may not even have anything owed or due to you because you've not taken those steps at the very beginning. Unfortunately, not all, but majority of the time, when marriages are not in a civil manner, then unfortunately we do find there's a lot of loss, and especially for women, because they're the ones that we see that are usually the ones that may not have the majority of the assets or the finance. They may not have their name in the house even. And also the fact that they may be left with nothing at the end. So in majority cases, it is something where it is a lot of protection, extra protection for the women. We know Islamically that we have the mahar, the dowry, at the very beginning. And that could be seen as a prenuptial agreement as well, especially if you're coming into a marriage where you've already built yourself up for many years. And not to say you want to be selfish and hold that yourself, but in an occasion where the marriage does dissolve and there is a separation, there is a divorce, there's a complete disconnect between the couples, then it could be distributed fairly. Also, the responsibility and the rights as to who's going to be guardian and taking care of that child and under which household and what has happened for them without much disruption. then that again is another aspect to consider when we are actually doing this. So I really would advise people and guide people to know your legal right, not just Islamically, but also in the UK where you reside, most definitely. Of course, we have got people watching from around the globe, and everywhere the law does differ. So you do need to seek that kind of advice from wherever you are and speak to somebody from that institute who is going to give you that advice, to know that just being married Islamically, are you actually due your rights? A lot of complaints do actually happen that even in the Islamic law, as much as it's quite fair and just, unfortunately, we don't have this happening for our Muslim women. And they are actually taking a longer time to get their divorce, and they're not getting their rights, they're not getting their dowry, there's delay from the male side. So there's lots and lots that is happening, unfortunately, that is actually stopping us from moving forward, even from a tragic situation, without having so much extra loss than even losing that relationship. So again, I'd like to invite you to call in to discuss this with us and take further sort of advice as to what is your next steps. And when do you discuss something like this? When do you actually understand how to move forward in a relationship where you're not going to take away the romantic side of it, not even address it where the other party is going to be upset? And they shouldn't be upset, because it's you both looking out for yourself and each other, as well as your future children. So if you are logical about this, and we cannot plan everything in life, but it's always best to take precautions. It's always best to know, where do you stand and what do you do in these moments? What happens in this kind of agreement, a marriage agreement, and how agreeable is that agreement if you are taking it to a court of law in the UK? Does it really stand strong to say that you've been married for even 10, 15, 20 years, and that Islamic marriage is actually going to get you what you deserve over those years of investment that you have with your partner? Now, these are a lot of questions that I put forward to you, and I'm sure you are going to be messaging me and sending me your comments as well, and I look forward to reading that. But I've left you with a lot of thoughts, and inshallah, we're going to go into a break soon, and when we come back, we hope to discuss this in more detail. Thank you so much for staying tuned, and I look forward to seeing you after the break. Take care.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. Again, we're here on another episode discussing a very, very crucial topic, and I really would love to hear your voices. This is your show. We only raise these topics because we get suggestions and we get comments from yourself, and we do get real scenarios, unfortunately, which are detrimental and challenging, and we want to bring this out on this platform so that we can raise awareness and we can give advice, tips, and lots of strategies of how to move forward. We know that as a minority community, that we are obviously, always fighting for a space to speak and also be heard, and also to create a different awareness for our community. It is really crucial as well that our Muslims understand that this is not taken away from their faith. We are here to make sure that we promote what you believe in, but at the same time, because we're living in a place that offers us certain things and we have to abide by certain things, and when things go wrong, we are going to be looked upon in a particular way to approach things through, for example, the court. So when it comes to recognizing the Islamic marriage in the UK, unfortunately, it is very, very limited. Even if you have got the mosques who are saying that it is recognized, but then to what extent is it recognized? Because if you actually look at some past cases where they have only been married through the Islamic way, and unfortunately the marriage was dissolved, and then there was dispute, and they had to, basically, for example, the wife in one of the cases had to actually ask for her rights for the actual property, the fact that she's lived in there her entire marital life, maybe over 15 years, and then she's been there with children. And unfortunately, because some cases the courts do not recognize the Islamic marriage, it is again null and void. So unless, of course, the party are amicable, which most cases are not like that when you are separating, and there is a lot of fight to actually get what you want and not even considering the other person, even though it's not really Islamic. But we do see, unfortunately, when it comes to marriages, it is all wonderful at the beginning. But when there is a fight or when there's anything that goes wrong, the finance always seems to win, in the fact that that's what matters, that's what comes first, and that's what you're fighting for. So in order to get your rights, you do need to have a civil marriage. So something that is registered, you can have it on the same day, you can have it the day before or after, and it will actually give you that validation, it will protect you, and you will actually be much more secure in your marriage. There are some unfortunate circumstances that even our mosques and centers, Islamic centers, do need to take into consideration, that even when a divorce that has happened through the UK courts and it's allowed for the couple to separate, that still, there are some circumstances where the man sometimes, does not want to still give that wife her freedom and still continue in that marriage, even though when it's been a divorce in the UK. So courts. So again, there's a lot of things that happens and we are not speaking about it. We are not raising enough conversation and awareness. And there are people that are going through so much trauma from these experiences, which are very unnecessary. It's already so traumatic to have a separation. It's already so traumatic to even know that your kids are going to be separated from yourselves at certain points. But let's make it fair. Let's make it just. And we are living in the West, and they do try and make it as fair and just as possible. And we also need to raise more awareness for the future that our mosques need to collaborate and have more sort of legal teams on their side to understand that they are going to be advising in the right way, so that when a couple comes to them, should they even have a civil marriage first before they even do the Islamic, because they're living in the UK. I mean, what is your thoughts on this? If you do want to call in, and if you do have an opinion, it is absolutely more than amazing to hear from you speak tonight, to actually share your thoughts with us. What has been your experience? The number is 01924231083. It would be absolutely amazing and crucial to hear some of the live stories that we do get tonight. I know I get messages all the time here on the platform wanting to actually basically come on and just speak. And hopefully, inshallah, we can have much more interaction with this. We do have my guest tonight, who's going to be a professional guidance to help you. And inshallah, she will not just be here to assist you, but to also give you some rulings as to what is your actual position if you choose not to have an Islamic to have an Islamic marriage without the civil marriage. Now, this is something which a lot of us do, thinking that, yes, we are fulfilling our Islamic rights, but how far does that take us? Unfortunately, again, we have to realize there is many, many limitations. There is so much that is holding us back from actually living a fulfilled life, and which can help us carry forward and, take away all the stress that is already there when you are actually going through something so detrimental. We have some messages coming through and I will read them out when we go through a break. But in the meantime, again, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us and for streaming live. I can't wait to introduce my guest who's going to be talking much more into it. And hopefully you're going to be sending in your questions so that she can be really busy with discussing this very crucial topic. It is most important that we do realize as well that here on British Muslim TV, if you are triggered by anything that is actually making you feel vulnerable, upset, or negative, we do have a support line, and you can contact us on BritishMuslim.tv/support. We've got it covered all around here to make sure that we take care of you, your mental well-being, your information, the education, giving awareness. It's a holistic approach because this is important for us to raise these kinds of topics each week so that we can have better sort of like education, especially in our Muslim communities. We do have some amazing professionals in our Muslim communities, but there are still some loopholes and some cultural differences and a lot of tradition that comes involved, which actually stops us from really benefiting fully. And Islamically, we know that knowledge is power, but it's not just about having that knowledge, but using it in the right direction and for the safeguarding for ourselves and our future spouses. And our family unit is the most important. That's why we have the show specifically for that, so that we can actually have an amazing discussion each week to raise these sort of issues and challenges, which doesn't even happen on mainstream. It doesn't happen everywhere else. And I'm bringing in guests that do come from experience, they come from professional backgrounds, they come from training, so that they can give you their best, guidance. I myself have trained and also qualified in many areas in human mind and behavior so that we can bring the best to you. That's what's really important. And again, if you have any questions, please send them through as my guests will be joining us so that we can answer so many of your questions and I have so many for my guests already. And I'm just hoping that she's going to have enough time to answer all of them, which I'm sure we're going to go through very soon. But the other thing I want to add is that when we are talking about these things, we're here talking from our own opinions and our own sort of experience and background, as well as our own professional. So we will have different ways of addressing it. And of course, depending on who you follow, the scholars that you take guidance from, it might differ slightly on the rulings, even when it comes to divorce, even when it comes to different sects. It will happen in a particular way where you might find that some of the information might be slightly different, might be a little bit contradictory, as we know that Islam is open to interpretation. And depending on who you follow, you will get that guidance. But we need to have more collaborations, more leadership, especially in our Muslim mosques and community centers, so that we can have a conformative sort of idea of where we stand on our legal rights, especially in our marital relationships. And this is why it's crucial to discuss this topic. It's crucial for us to do our due diligence with regards to knowing the law, knowing that if worst case scenario, what will happen to myself, what will happen to my children, what would happen in the finance that I have provided for this relationship over the many years, the assets that we have built together, all of a sudden I've accumulated, which I didn't have at the very beginning. And am I allowed to share that? Am I allowed to break that vow, or to be fair, or what is the proportion that is allowed for me or my husband, or things like that? Now, these are the kind of questions we do need to answer, and we do need to ask, more importantly, when we are actually coming into an actual relationship. Now, I know that when we are discussing relationships, we always think about, meeting that partner and feeling all amazing and not upsetting the other person by these kind of discussions and conversations. but it is so crucial. And I'm going to explain to you, inshallah, after the break, why is it so crucial that we do know our legal rights and we do take opportunity to be part of that system by actually having the civil marriage, so that we can actually have better sort of like understanding of where we stand when it comes to difficult situations like in divorce. And I just want to say again that we are here open to take your calls. If you want to call in, it is 01924 231 083. Please ask the bill payer's permission, as well as if you want to WhatsApp message us anonymously, you are more welcome to do so as well on 07585 835 150. Amazing discussion about the recognition of the Islamic marriage. It will be coming to a break right now, and inshallah, when we come back, we will be speaking to our guest, who is very highly professional and educated in this area. And inshallah, she'll be giving us all the answers, and we will be talking to her after the break. Please stay exactly where you are, and we will see you shortly after the short break. Assalamu alaikum.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. We're here discussing the recognition of Islamic marriage within the UK. And I would love to invite my guest, who is Camilla Choudhury-Khawaja, and she'll be talking to you and answering all our questions, inshallah. And I can't wait to speak to her and get all her insights. Assalamu alaikum, Camilla, are you there?
Hi, walaikum salam, yes.
Oh, it's so lovely to see you. I'm so excited. It's been absolutely an amazing talk so far. And I know you've just been in court all day and you've been working, but I'm so glad you're joining us tonight. So I'm going to go straight into it. Tell me a little bit about yourself, because you're not just an amazing professional Muslim women's lawyer. You have a mission in life, and you know there's a reason behind that. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
The practice is called the women's lawyer, and it is fundamentally to help those who are vulnerable, and set up in light of the legal aid cuts in 2013. But Fahima, before I talk about that, thank you very much for having me on and for sharing this experience with me. To create awareness and to educate the public is a beautiful thing. And I think that it's really fantastic that we're collaborating and doing something brilliant together. So thank you. Thank you very much. But
my pleasure.
In terms of my practice, it is fundamentally in the field of family law. I specialise in matrimonial finance, and I am expanding into Islamic law because there have been so many inquiries as to those who are Islamically married but not legally married under the law of England and Wales. So to come on and to create awareness and hopefully help people, boys as much as girls who are thinking of getting married, it's a great thing. And I think that if we can do something to help those who are considering marriage, it would be a really, really sort of positive thing for your viewers.
It's funny that you say that. It's very interesting, actually, because when you said they are not legally married. So let's just clarify. The recognition of the Islamic marriage is not legally recognized in the UK. Am I correct, or is there somewhere around it? Can you sort of elaborate on that, please?
The Islamic marriage, if conducted in an Islamic state, So the fundamental principle of international law is that if you are married Islamically in a country that recognizes that marriage, you are married all over the world. So, for example, if you get married in Dubai, or you get married in Pakistan, or you get married in a country where, the Islamic law prevails. The issue is where you get married in countries like England and you don't also accompany it with a civil marriage. That's the fundamental issue. So if you don't do the civil marriage in the UK, then unfortunately the nikah itself is not recognised.
And what does that mean now if it's not recognized? Now, you obviously deal with people that come to you who are married Islamically for many years. And this is why we're raising this as an awareness, as an issue, as a real challenge, because a lot of Muslim families, even up till today, whether they're educated or not, they will only think it is okay to have the Islamic marriage. But you know for a fact that when there is a divorce, when there's separation and they want to obviously split, then there are complications. And what are those complications when there isn't a civil marriage in place?
Fahima, there are various complications if there is no legal marriage in place. And that is where people like myself come in. Unfortunately, we deal with the aftermath of it. And what I'm trying to do through your show is to prevent those problems, so preventative rather than dealing with the problem as an aftermath. One of the fundamental issues is where you are not legally married, the primary issue is you cannot make a financial claim as if you were married. So you can't claim, for example, on your husband's pension. You can't claim on the properties. This is if your name is not on that other property. Right. So what I'm trying is, if you are married under the law of England and Wales, it doesn't matter if your name's on the other property. None of that matters. The fact is you are married. But if you are only Islamically married, you are legally a cohabitant. Now, that's the most unfortunate thing, because our people, they think that they are married in the eyes of God. And of course they are. But what's awful is when the marriage, the Islamic marriage, comes to an end. And unfortunately, Fahima, it's usually the woman who suffers. Usually the woman who suffers. Because we are primary carers of our children. We are those that potentially work part-time because of our responsibilities at home. Many of us don't work at all. So the reality is, if, for example, the property is in your husband's name because he has the income and he has the mortgage, and then latterly to make a claim on that as a cohabitant is extremely complicated from a legal perspective. I mean, in any event, it's not family law, it's litigation, and the law is called talata, which is hugely complex and terribly expensive. So what people really need to do, and of course there's a lot of talk in Parliament about the reform of this, and what people really need to do is do a civil marriage simultaneously with the nikah, or do the nikah in a venue that is recognised as a civil registry venue. So there are ways to incorporate the two. And if you can't incorporate the two, then certainly you must do both. That's my point, because women suffer. It is my job to help those who have been in extremely difficult situations as a result of not having been legally married. So why don't we respect the most fundamental tenet of Islam, which is to respect our host country? Why not look at the fact we are resident in England and Wales? This is our home. So in light of that, to respect the law of the land and to say this is what we need to do to be married in the eyes of the law. So let's implement it simultaneously with our religious obligations. I mean, a nikah is almost like a prenuptial agreement.
I was going to ask you about that, actually.
Within the context of it.
Yes, even when it comes to the prenuptial agreement, I have read a lot of the literature that you've sent me, and that's not a binding agreement, though, is it? But it does stand in the courts. Is that correct? Or how does that work with the prenup as well? Because I wasn't aware of that either.
No, my point was that the most beautiful thing about our faith is that, albeit 1400 years old, the insight that we have from our faith in terms of considering a divorce within the context of the nikah, considering the monies that would be entitled to the wife within the concept of the nikah, what would happen in terms of the split. Now, all of that reminds me very much of a prenup, but sorry, to answer your question, it is very new prenups in the UK. They're relatively new. And Fahima, a lot of those who are wealthy particularly, or those who are entering second marriages and perhaps want to protect what they own for their children from their first marriage, they are entering into prenups. Now, prenups are, people don't want to think about divorce when they're getting married, because we look at marriage with sort of rose-tinted vision and we think, oh, it's never going to happen. But it does. And it happens, a lot more in our community than it used to. Or perhaps women maybe are becoming more empowered and leaving behind situations. And what is really important to me is that women are not exploited, because we have this, I don't know if the word is new, but we have an issue whereby, certainly I've seen in some cases, men will perhaps marry the first wife legally, and I mean under the law of England, but then they will Islamically marry a second time, even a third time. And, it's almost like a loophole, which is, extremely disconcerting. Of course, that's not meant to happen, but it's a way around our law in this country, and I find it most disturbing that I do a lot of radio work, and I was on the radio talking about the Islamic marriage, and a gentleman phoned in and he actually said, so if I don't legally marry my wife, she won't be able to claim on my properties.
Yeah,
and,
that's the sad truth, unfortunately.
It's so exploitative, and one must consider one's security. That is what life is about. It's about making the best that we can out of any situation that we're in. And certainly, I think if you are a mother, then that's something that should be prevalent in your mind. Or if you're planning to have children, it's so important to protect them, because Fahima, and the reason why I'm talking about women in particular is because we are raising the next generation. And
Absolutely.
I think it's so, I have 2 teenage boys, and alhamdulillah, the most wonderful thing is that they have so much respect for women, because they're surrounded by powerful women, and they see women like you and me and their aunts who are doing fantastic things. And,
I love this, Camilla. You are giving me so much information, but unfortunately we are coming towards a break, and we will be coming back and asking you some more questions. Please stay tuned, as we're only getting warmed up. I'll see you in a few moments. Assalamu alaikum. We'll see you after the break. Take care.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the final part of the show. We're here at Single Muslim live on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. It's gone past so quickly, but we do have with us an esteemed guest, Camilla. You've been talking so much about the importance of having a civil marriage, also the actual recognition of Islamic marriage within the UK, and you've given us so much vital information, which is absolutely wonderful right now. And obviously your concern is to have relationships that are actually protected, that are secure, and especially for our women, because we are the ones, unfortunately, are the ones that are getting the raw end of the deal when it comes to the separation. Now, I would like for you to give us a little bit of insight as to how can we reform, especially as a community, and is there any collaboration that needs to be done, any more improvements, especially when it comes to our, Muslim communities with the leaders, Islamic mosques and, the centers. What's your thoughts on reform in order to make sure that this awareness is going to be not just spoken about, but actually taken into real sort of like, where we can actually do something about it, where we can actually take steps to make a difference?
Fahima, this is the first step. This is the first step. We are in a position of privilege, and in order to to even be with you on this channel and to talk about it and to create awareness. And I know you and I are going to speak at length, but we have a lot to do, because to live in a state of ignorance is not helping. So one needs to recognize that, we are doing something that is absolutely not disrespectful to Islam, but if anything, quite the opposite. When I read in the Quran about how important it was to respect in fact, I think it even goes further and says that if there were any conflict, that one should look at the national law of the land. And indeed, that is the view of our British government. There was a very important case, Akhtar and Khan, recently. And, and the wife, she was a solicitor, in fact. And she only got married Islamically, and they'd had a very long marriage and children and lived in Dubai and so forth. The reality was, however, that when they came to getting divorced, she wasn't his wife in a legal context. And the reason I wanted to stress this is because actually this went to court, and then she actually proved that as opposed to it being a non-marriage, it was a void marriage. Now, that's just a legal technicality, but what it essentially means is that she could make a financial claim upon her husband's assets, if you like. Sorry, not his assets, their assets. And then the Attorney General, who is, of course, our government's lawyer, the Attorney General intervened and appealed. And on the part of the government, he won. And Fahima, what that meant was it became a marriage that was a non-marriage. Now, if we use that as an example and start talking to the communities, to the schools, to the Islamic societies at universities, we need to target young people. It's not really people who are even our age. It's people who are thinking of getting married and, creating that awareness whereby they think, we need to protect ourselves, and having also that enlightenment, which I found upon my reading, that the nikah is such a beautiful thing in terms of it being a sort of quasi prenuptial agreement. And I think that if you are able to perhaps have me on again and we talk about different facets of marriage and children and finance, because I could talk to you about this for hours, but and
I could listen for ages as well. And I know that we do need to split the time when it comes to this, and unfortunately we are only having a few moments left. But the thing is, if someone was already married for so many years and now after listening to the show they actually went and did a civil marriage, what about the years behind? Is that in any sort of consideration, or is it just from the point of when they actually had the civil marriage?
No, it is seamless cohabitation from when two parties start living together, and the courts are, in fact, my case today, I was on a trial all day today. The husband was making the claim against my client because she owned a couple of properties 20 years pre-marriage. So what he was trying to do, Fahima, was say that he had been living with her from considerably longer previously than when he actually moved in. And then the judge looked at, it took some hours with evidence, but the long and short of it was that we took it from the date we established they started living together. So the answer is, if you haven't done it, do it. And if you are getting married, do both. I did mine on the nikah on the 18th of July, and then I did my registry on the 19th of July in the morning. And I think that, my father is a lawyer, and it was very important to him that I did both. And he was absolutely right, because the meher money is, if you look at it in terms of the realism of life and expense and mortgages and maintaining children, and if your children go to independent school fees and all that sort of stuff, the meher money couldn't possibly cover that unless it was seriously substantial. And it's a personal thing, but I don't mind sharing it, that mine was £50 because my father's view, but of course he's a solicitor of England and Wales, but his view was very much that if anything were to go wrong, one would claim under English law. So all I'm trying to say is, let's try to avoid future problems. Let's try to work collaboratively. And I think, Fahima, the work you do is fantastic, because you speak to couples pre-marriage. You speak to the pre-marriage and give the insight that they need. I've seen some of your YouTube shows and they're brilliant. So perhaps we should do one together and say that you're thinking about getting married and these are the legal technicalities. The law is to protect. This is the most important thing. The law is there to protect. The law is there fundamentally to protect children and those who are vulnerable. But let's try to avoid even going to people like myself. Let's try to, do preventative care. I think it's quite possible.
I hear you clearly, and I appreciate what you're saying, but what you do is incredible as well. And I don't think that without you, we could have come up with something this amazing to talk about tonight. And I think, your work is so valuable. The thing is, what would sort of hold someone back from having, and why do you think in our community we're so stuck on not having the civil marriage? Let's just be open and honest right now. What are the reasons that you see that people might be afraid? Even if they're really intellectual, you don't really have to have a solicitor in your household to understand, but we're living here in this country. What is your experience of people not wanting to actually have a civil marriage? Is it unselfishness, unfairness, or wanting to have that extra loophole? What is it? What is your thoughts on that, Camilla?
I think that it's a twofold thing. I think the most important thing, and understandably, is to be married in the eyes of God. I absolutely understand and respect that. But we also need to be conscious of our surroundings. We also need to be conscious of the fact that within the context of that marriage, God willing, we would have children. So, it is important to think ahead. This is what I always teach my children. You've got to think about consequence. So if you're going to do A and B, one must think about C. And I think as mothers, we have an obligation to our sons and indeed our daughters, probably even more so to our sons, to recognize that they are Muslim boys. They have an obligation to behave in a certain manner and to recognize that Allah's intention was that women would be equal to men. We are no different. We are
Absolutely. I love
happy.
everything that you've said, but unfortunately, we have come towards the end of the show. But before we close, I want to give you the opportunity to share some final thoughts. You've been absolutely brilliant, and what you've given, it doesn't matter the timing, has been absolutely valuable and so vital. And hearing it from you, especially with your position, with your professional background, it is so crucial. Every minute, every second counts when you speak, honestly. So I want to give you those final couple of minutes for you to, give your final thoughts. And also, please share, how do people get in touch with you? Because unfortunately, there are people who might need your services or might need your legal advice. So please give us some final thoughts as well as how to get hold of you, Camilla.
Fahima, alhamdulillah, thank you very much. It's very kind words, incredibly kind of you. My practice is based in Watford. We have a unique practice with the women's lawyer in that there are solicitors upstairs. So Nadia Raphael is a solicitor upstairs, and I've inherited her. She's now my little sister. We met on a case. We met 8 years ago on a case, and she was my opposition and used to fight with me no end. But the point being, she is a solicitor, she is upstairs and she's superb, and I am the barrister and I am downstairs with my own chambers. I'm also in a super duper group with Fareen Ali and Humma Qureshi. They are my fantastic team, and they help me day to day with everything, including these sort of things like creating awareness. If you wanted to get in touch with me, if you just have to Google me or Google the women's lawyer, and you would have the most fantastic team of women helping you. You would have Nadia, you would have Fareen, you'd have Humma, and you would have me. So nothing could go wrong.
Fantastic. I love that. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. An absolute pleasure. You're so talented, mashallah. And you know what? I'm really happy to have you on, and we're so proud and lucky to have Camilla with us tonight. Thank you so much for your presence. I know how busy you are, and inshallah, we will definitely collaborate again. Thank you everyone for watching. And like I said, this has been a very crucial topic with a very esteemed guest tonight. I just want to say thank you so much for joining in and all your support. And inshallah, we will see you next week with another topic. Take care. Have a lovely evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.